I'm Madelyn Blair, and this is Unlocked. On today's show, I'll be joined by Ed Hoffman and Ken Foster to talk about what it means to be a TV host. After our conversation, I'll be talking about what simplicity means in marketing. So stay tuned. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Madelyn Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about activating the resilient leader in you. Have you ever dreamed of hosting your own TV show? You know, TV goes beyond the podcast realm with captivating video, expert insights, and exposure to a vast new audience, all accessible on your phone as well as that 65-inch TV. And you know, the amount of time that people spend in front of their TVs and in front of their screens is growing all the time. Today, we're going to explore this topic, but I'm going to do it with a dear friend, Ed Hoffman. I'm going to bring him on screen. Hello, Ed.
Good to see you again, Madelyn.
Thank you. You know, Ed and I are going to make sure that we get the information that is of interest to you, because I am so close to this topic. I wanted to make sure there was another perspective in the room. So as many of you recall from previous times when Ed has been with me, he's the former Chief Knowledge Officer of NASA, faculty of Columbia University, author of The Smart Mission, and CEO of Knowledge Strategies. Ed is a curiosity that just won't quit, and he asks the best questions. I think it may reflect that his approach to management and performance, in his own words, are people, learning, and engagement. And sometimes he even says, people, people, people. Mm-hmm. He's also a great friend and colleague. Thank you, Ed, for joining me today.
Always great to be here. Yeah, always great to be with you, Madelyn.
Thank you. Now let us bring on Ken Foster. Ken, you have a green background, which is fine. Just want to make sure that's what you want.
Well, it wasn't green a minute ago. Let me see what we can do there.
Oh, hey, that's great. That's great.
And, how's that background? Is that
I think it's lovely. I think it's lovely.
Should we go with the blue Hawaii?
I want to be there. That's what I know.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Well, I think that seems like a nice background.
Okay, good. Well, nice. Let me tell our audience about Ken. He's a keynote speaker, best-selling author, business strategist, and news personality who owns a broadcast and media production company. He is the executive producer and host of the Voices of Courage show, syndicated on TV, podcast, plus radio and broadcast in 185 countries. And his book, by the way, is called The Courage to Change Everything. I know Ken as a fellow TV host on E360 TV and this very network, in fact. He's putting on a remarkable special, which we'll discuss a bit later. Ken, welcome to Unlocked.
Thank you so much for having me here, Madelyn. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I look forward to a great conversation today with you and Dr. Ed.
Thank you. Good. Well, Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you immediately.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously, of the three of us, there's one person here who doesn't fit with excellence in TV. That's me. And that allows me to do what I enjoy to do, to ask questions. Being a NASA guy, I think things start with an idea, a dream, a vision. And Ken, maybe start with you. What was the vision for the show that you do, and how has it evolved over time?
Well, the vision was to get my voice in the world and to be able to maybe make a difference. You know, when we look at the world, there's a lot of chaos going on. There's a lot of divisiveness. There's a lot of separation, whether it's separation of political parties, separation of race, color, creed, whatever. You know, we've got that still going on, which is amazing to me. So I thought, you know, I'm only one voice, but I'm gonna put that voice in the world. And I started out in radio in San Diego on KCBQ, which is part of the Salem network, the largest talk show network in the world. Then I went into streaming on social media, to podcast, and then into TV. and where I've spent the last several years putting on TV shows. And I love what I do. So I've learned that when we bring in these amazing guests into our shows, that not only does the audience grow, but a lot of times I grow, I learn, I develop, I evolve my own thinking, and it's just been an amazing experience, Ed.
Yeah, well, you have a passion for improving society, so I would see that as motivating. That certainly comes through. Madeline, what about you? What was the initial vision for what you do in terms of communicating, and how it evolved over time?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm going to join your voice, Ken, in terms of trying to create a better world for everybody. No question in my mind that there's a real need for um, looking at what can be done instead of what can't be done and what we have to oppose. I started in radio also and spent 3 years in radio. Loved the medium because it was, first of all, much easier than television. And you could still meet really great people and have good conversations. But I finally decided that I wanted to do more, and I shifted over to television. It gave me a little bit more control. But just like Ken, you meet amazing, amazing people, a very different variety of people, but still bringing enormous insight into the world. And I have to admit, just as Ken said, you learn from listening as well as doing what you're doing. So I think that's kind of where I came in. I now am on television, but I also am on YouTube and Spotify and Apple TV.
So both of you have a desire to improve society, and you like to do it by talking with exceptional people and getting that word out. I come from a background at NASA where anything that happens is going to be in a team. So I imagine that team would still be important in terms of TV production. Uh, Ken, how do you approach that? How do you form a team in terms of being successful, and what are some of your practices for how you do that?
That's a wonderful question, Ed. Over the last many years, I've hired hundreds of people onto different teams, and I'm a long-term meditator, many decades. When I decided to put the team together for the Voices of Courage show, and ultimately the TCN, the Courage Network, which I'm a network president of, I looked to India. I went to India to develop the team, and I found amazing people in India that were videographers, editors, blog writers, copywriters, people that could run my content management, and on it went. So I put together a team, and this team is highly effective. I think one of the reasons we stay together, and this is kind of getting off subject a little bit, but I'll say that is that my whole being today in the season of life that I'm in is really to be of service to others. So when a person comes onto my team, it's not only about helping me to grow my business, it's me helping them to grow their vision, their business and their vision. They come on in with my vision, my clear cut vision of where I'm going for my business, but I also support them in their visions of what they have.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me because I would see, in my bias, I would see a TV individual who's kind of, this is the vision and everyone forms around that. But what you're clearly saying is that they're plural visions. We come for a purpose, for a direction, but there's room there for us to have different ways of being successful in our goals.
Well, I'd like to comment on that real quick because the old business model is the top-down model where I tell you what to do, when to do, how to do it, and whatnot. And I have to say, my team members are all in their 20s and 30s, and that model doesn't work very well. The model that works is finding our values, our common values, supporting each person to live those values, supporting they support me, like I said, I support them, and being able to understand that, what happens. Let me put it this way. I asked a fellow the other day, his name is Dr. Irvin Laszlo. We'll be talking about him later on in this as to the project I'm doing. But Dr. Laszlo has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize twice, and he's written over 106 books, and he's a very accomplished systems thinker, philosopher. I asked him, I said, I said, first of all, I said, I think I consider you a great person, a great man. And I said, so what is the price of greatness? And he paused for a second and he thought to himself, it's living from the consciousness of oneness. It's a deep conversation. I'm one with you, you're one with me. What I do impacts you, what you do impacts me. He said, if we can start to live from that place and then find out who we are as a soul, he said the world will change. And I thought, that's how I run my business. That's how I run teams. We're all one. I'm not better than them or less than them. They're not better than me or less than me. We all come together for common purposes.
That sounds, yeah, that represents where society has to be and where it's going. So I thank you for sharing that. Madelyn, I've known you, I've worked with you for a long time. I consider you one of the best coaches, mentors around. So I know team is important to you. How does team fit in to the notion of preparing and running a show, a TV show?
Well, I have to say, I have probably managed about 600 project teams. So I've had the opportunity to try things out differently, etc. In the end, very much my approach and my actions are to help the members of the team achieve the goals that they have. Now, some people would say, well, that's impossible. How can you achieve the mission if they're achieving their goals? But they don't understand. Your job as a manager is to figure out how their goals, meeting their goals, what they can do to meet both. And I've done that. And today, in terms of my TV show, I use a lot of interns. Now, I hire them as part-time students, should say students part-time. And I say to them, this is not a part-time job, it's an internship. Because I'm going to teach you whatever you need to do for what we're doing here in the show. And I've had just wonderful interns. I mean, just amazing. Right now, I have one that's actually in the other room working right now on another project. This summer, we had 3 that were working in the office. And their energy is important for me to bring new ideas and freshness. And I hope I have imparted something to them. I also use some virtual people. I've got some people in, I think they're in New Mexico that do some work for me. And I have someone in Houston, Texas, who does some work on my social media, for my social media. And I've actually used people from all over the world, but right now that's what the team looks like.
And so again, you're emphasizing again the importance of the people, in essence, kind of the oneness and the learning, the opportunity to learn together. I wonder, Ken, if you can talk about the leadership aspects of what you do. What are the key capabilities to be a leader in your field, and what do you pride yourself on in terms of doing effectively as a leader?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start with the second one first, and the pride thing, or I try to stay humble. That's number one. Right. And there's a definition of humility that I came across years ago that I really like. It's the ability to see reality clearly. And so, from a leadership point of view, I think that's the number one quality of leaders: be able to see reality clearly and stay humble. Number 2 is the visionary part of that. For me, I take some time in meditation, and then after I meditate, I contemplate and we think about the vision of the show, of where the show's going, what I'd like to see in the show, what's not working in the show, and then I come together with a team and I share that with usually some pretty good decisive. I'm pretty clear with what I want to do. But I think with the leadership part, adaptability is really key. So for me to be an adaptive leader to their ideas, to shifting when things are not working, and to see reality. It goes back to seeing reality clearly. I just I'll give you an example. We hired a group to help us get a lot of subscribers for YouTube, right? And so, they were getting subscribers, but then I looked at the watch time and it was like 15 seconds. I was like, well, okay, We got to adjust here really quick because this is not working. So let's focus on watch time and not worry so much about how many subscribers we have. So we switched, and of course that we had to switch. We had to switch who we hired and what we did and how we thought and how we analyzed the numbers and everything else. But that would be an example of that. And I think the last piece, which I kind of mentioned earlier, is being really decisive. Um, Early on in my career as an entrepreneur, I create a lot of chaos for my teams because I went from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, and my teams ended up overwhelmed just like I was. And so I realized that I need to have clear vision, be decisive, but also keep it simple. Okay? So, um, and as we already talked, empowering our teams consistently with supporting them on their dreams. For me, that's key.
There's a maturity to your statement. When I was a student, many years, decades, if honestly, at Columbia, one of my professors was Noel Tishy, taught at Columbia and was doing work at the time with GE. And he said the first role of a leader is to define reality.
Oh,
And I thought, I'm a 20 something, define reality. That's easy. I mean, reality is reality. And then you go through life and you find out that that is the core of issue. That's fascinating. Madelyn, leadership. What are the aspects that have led to your success and the fact that people want to work with you and listen to you?
I think I'm just going to um, add on to what has already been said because I'm really delighted, Ken, at how congruent our thinking is on many things. Um, I think I would add the word transparent. When I work with people, whether they are a guest on the show or whether they're an intern or whether they're a coachee, a student, uh, I want them to understand what I'm asking them to do, the reasons behind it, so that they see the context in which the action is taking place. Actually, that's a way of talking about the reality. You're defining the context. And once they know the context, I've never had difficulty with people um, not being willing to do what needs to be done. Transparency.
Absolutely. I want to follow up with you, Madelyn,
Okay.
from the standpoint of one of the things that you're both in a creative business, right? You have to do things that bring on new ideas. You have to be stimulating as well as offering application. One of the times that we were together, we went to a bookstore, and you met one of my favorite bookstore owners, Kathy Harrick,
Yeah.
and by the end of the day, you had her agreeing to be on a podcast. So for both of you, I guess the question is, and I'll start with you, Madelyn, how do you go about creating the innovation, the ideas, the newness, and by tapping into different people that come in and are part of your show?
I think it's just a willingness to be open and flexible. When I see an opportunity like that one, uh, I meet the person, I get to know them, and what I'm always looking for is, do they have a story to tell? And do they bring energy to that story? Another way, do they bring passion to the story? So Kathy was a perfect example. Oh my goodness, she had wonderful stories to tell, and she brought her passion. You could see it. Another one was Susan Bork. Susan, I met on a Zoom meeting, and I was listening to her, and I said, "This woman really not only has a passion for the law, she can really convey it to you." And so I had her on to talk about negotiation, and huge hit because she could so clearly define what was needed to be an effective negotiator. The third example, because I think you need to see all three of them to get a sense of how I go about this. I'm in a class and I'm listening, and I'm teaching this class, and I'm listening to the stories from the students. And I hear one from Funa. They called him Funa. His real name is Akafuna Ngomlu. And he was talking about growing up in the home of international diplomats. And they had in their home a peace room. and he defined what a peace room was. And I thought, now that's different. I've never, ever, ever heard that. And so I had him on the show. And he talked about what it means to create a room in your house that is for peace. And in that room, you set certain guidelines as to how you will be communicating with one another. That it doesn't matter, rank, you leave rank at the door so that his 5-year-old can tell him anything he needs to say to his father. And it's okay. And it was amazing. So those are 3 very different examples of how I found people and assessed as I was listening to them initially. This person has a story to tell, and this person will bring real energy to the show.
Yeah, I also see why both of you capture audiences, because we've been talking. You mentioned peace rooms. Ken, you talked about the meditation as a source of inspiration. So this isn't, just the normal stuff. This is real part of your lives that go into different directions. Ken, how do you really maintain the creativity? How do you create the story? Do you find the story and look for the person, or do you find the person and look for the story that's there?
I'm a man of deep faith, and I'm also trained my mind to be very aware. And I see synchronicity in pretty much everything and everywhere I go. I look for individuals that have voices of courage, which is, of course, the name of my show, Voices of Courage. And for instance, the synchronicity part, this morning before we recorded here, I was supposed to be on another recording, and the host didn't show up, but the support team did. As one guy, he was in Nigeria, and beautiful black man. I mean, he's just radiant. This guy had white light coming behind him. I'm like, whoa, who are you? So I said, well, there's synchronicity here. There's a reason you and I are connecting. Tell me about you. Come to find out, he's got a new book out, 2 weeks old. I questioned him about the book and the courage and why he wrote it and what the purpose of the book is and the benefits to the audience. And I got, okay, you're good. You're good. I'm going to invite him to be on the show. And so we set up a recording time. And I'm always looking for that a little out of the box. We're not getting a lot of voices from Nigeria right now. Right. In other African nations, I found another one last month that was on my show that has a nonprofit out of Africa, and the courage that these people express and the stories that they've overcome to be where they are profound. So it inspires me, it motivates me, and if it inspires and motivates me, and you're a courageous person, that's what I look for. And it's kind of a very synchronistic, like I said, faithful journey that it's kind of funny. I mean, just last night or 2 nights ago, I thought, I'd really like to find a new guest for this Helix show that I have. And instantly today, here it is. It's magical, honestly. But here's what I've learned, and I know you want to comment, Madelyn. Here's what I've learned: is that with intention or with commitment, providence moves. The people, places, and things we need to show up happen.
Yeah, I can look at my schedule and say, oh, gee, I need somebody for this particular date, and somehow somebody calls me. Or it just happens.
Yeah. It's, well, both of you are, so people, you're centered is the word I think Kenny used, and you're people oriented in terms of improving things. So I think you open it up to these possibilities, providence happening. If you want to follow up with the notion of your team, starting with you, Ken, you have these you have a number of people you work with. You have visions for how you want to improve and help each other out. How do you go about the collaboration? And perhaps you can say a little bit. A lot of your focus is courage, which I equate with. I always felt the best leaders at NASA had psychological boldness, not just safety, boldness. They did things. And talk about collaboration with your team for the show, and perhaps how that connects to the issue of courage.
Sure. Well, I'll start with courage first, because courage is more than just a word. It's a feeling, it's a presence, it's a power that we all have within us. And it's interesting because most of the time courage shows up when people are in the unknown. They're walking into a place that they haven't been there before. And that's where courage seems to show up. So when people say, "Well, Ken, how do I develop courage?" I say, "Well, go out and do something you've never done before for the next 14 days, and see how that increases your courage." Right? How I use that and apply that with the team is, from my own point of view, I never know what the team's going to share. Okay, they have wonderful ideas, and so there's some courage on my part to show up. But I'll give you an example. We're putting together a summit for, as I mentioned, Dr. Urban Laszlo, and summit's coming up on November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So when I started this process, I put my team together, and I said, this is the vision, this is what I want to do. And only one other person on the team has ever put together a summit. I've put together many of them. The last one I did a couple of years ago, we had 500,000 people view the summit. So I've got some experience with it, but they didn't have any. So I just said, here's what we need. Here's what we need to do. Talk to me. Tell me what your ideas are, right? And with my leadership and their brainstorming, we brainstormed together. Man, it's coming together in a way. I think this would be the best summit I've ever done because of the collaboration of the team and how everybody is committed to this process. You get buy-in with team when you step back and allow the team to participate, as Madelyn would know and say. So that's kind of how I run it. I create a safe space. I want to say that. I create a safe space for everybody to share whatever they need to share. And we don't have a team of what do I want to say? Criticism thinking. Okay, we have a critical thinking team. We think critically, but we don't criticize anybody. Nobody gets to do that on the team.
Yeah, you set up an environment for creativity because it's safe, and it's more than safe. I think you're setting a goal for we want to be moving the system, so we have to go for that. Yeah.
And I'll plus that with one last thing. If I feel a team member is off or they didn't get to contribute or share what they wanted, I will take, after our team meeting, I will take time with that team member to acknowledge them, to find out their ideas. Somebody can't fit it in the time we have. I'm there to really support that person. And that makes all the difference in the world. Again, it's not about Ken, it's about the team. And making sure every team member feels acknowledged, feels that they're part of the team. If they have an issue or they disagree with somebody, which that happens, right? We should, one says you got to market it this way, the other one says you got to market it that way. I always take into both people's point of view, and then of course I make the final decision. So,
yeah. And Madelyn, of course, I've known you for a very long time. You have a magical ability to make people comfortable. When you give a call, sometimes we haven't spoken for weeks, and you say, "Hey, can we do this?" And I always say yes to you. You don't even have to tell me because there's a trust there and all these factors. How do you foster collaboration among the people that you work with? How do you have that gift?
I think it comes from something that I grew up with. In my family, I was taught that absolutely every person on this earth is worthy. They are worthy to exist. They are worthy to be respected. And I never, when you're growing up as a kid, you just think that's normal. And I discovered that it's not normal. But I wasn't going to lose it when I grew up. Because that is who I am. And one of the ways in which I express that to a group where we're just beginning to work together. One of the things that comes to mind is when I worked with the teams at Columbia, the teams and students. And I would begin by saying that Dr. Blair is going to ask you all kinds of questions, but never, never consider this question to be a critique of what you've done. All it means is that Dr. Blair needs more information. Now, they didn't really believe what I was saying, but about 2 weeks later, you could see that they were beginning to ask questions the same way. And we had created that total collaboration, total openness. Ken mentioned it as well, that you really want to make it so that people really feel safe. And that's what I did. And that's how I did it.
The audience both of you have, I'm sure you consider a key part, maybe the most important part of your team. How do you go about getting feedback and using it? And what has been perhaps the feedback that's been most surprising to you that you use? You want to continue, Madelyn, or can either of you? I have this. I have a feeling you have both of you have a very strong connection to your audience. So that means that there's an engagement. That means there's respect and pulling things in. So how do you go about that? And what's been surprising to
I'll
you?
start with that.
Okay.
I get people all the time telling me how amazing the show is, how brilliant it is. I love the show. I get that. I get a lot. I get a lot of that. And I would say that I love what you said about the audience being one of the most important part of the team. I feel like the audience is just another part of my team, right? They are part of that. And one of the things I do, I think, effectively with the audience, and I'll just take off what Madelyn said. Sometimes people, you hear something, but you don't necessarily get it, right? And a couple weeks later, you might get it. Before I start most of my shows, again, I'm a man of faith. We say a prayer. I connect with the guest. And then I pre-frame my audience a lot of times. And sometimes I use NLP to pre-frame them. I'll say, I realize you probably won't do this, but, this is what we're going to talk about today. And of course, in their mind, they'll go like, well, yeah, I'm going to do that. So I do a little pre-framing the audience to help them to really be receptive. And I do talk about receptivity of the audience up front on several of my shows. Because from my point of view, if you're just going to listen to my show and you're not going to I don't know, take action is the wrong word, but if you're not going to embody what we're talking about, then you don't need to really waste your time. That's kind of my point of view. Community building with the audience is important. Right now, we're focused building the community over there on YouTube. That's my focus. We've built community through networking events, primarily through networking events with the audience themselves. We have also, my show is really about helping the audience increase awareness. So what I try to do, and I'll just repeat, and then I'll turn it back over to Madelyn. But what I try to do is give them actions that would be inspiring to them. And I don't do it. My guests do it. They tell these amazing stories of courage, of strength, of overcoming things. And most of the time I sit there in awe going, where did you find the courage to do that? So that's kind of how I do with my audience. And we also have ways that the audience can give us direct feedback on our websites, that type of thing.
Madelyn, what about you? What's
Yeah.
your approach for the audience and feedback and anything that surprised you?
Well, yeah, I like Ken. People come and tell me they love the show. They always watch it. I bring value. You can't stop doing this, Madelyn. You have to keep doing this work. So that of course energizes you. Okay, good. I should keep on going. But I have not had success in getting my audience to actually send me comments. And I used to do live shows, and I had to stop that for a while because it was too much for me to handle all the technical side of things as well as the online. But I'd love to bring that back in, because when you hear questions from people and comments from people directly, that's a great way to get some comments, get some sense of the show. But one of the things I do is I look at my statistics. Ken mentioned earlier this, the average watch time. And he's right. In YouTube, it can be just 15 seconds. But on television, you really are working to get a fair amount of minutes. And it took me a while to get to 20 minutes on a full hour show. I think it took about a year to get there. And then I said, I am going to go for 30 minutes because 30 minutes is considered to be a really good average watch time on a 1 hour show. And I would say in the last 3 months, we're there. In fact, we've exceeded it. And I went back and I traced and I said, I know exactly why that happened. At the end of the show, or as the last segment of the show, I do something called Grounds for Thought, where I speak about something that has impacted my life. And for some reason, people really loved it. And I said, okay, and the numbers gave me the feedback in that particular case. I knew that that was effective when it jumped in terms of average wait time, and it stayed there.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So it's also, you look at the data, right? You look at results and you use the numbers as a way to inform, and then you go back to yourself to explore that and to experiment and try things out. What's the hope of the impact of the show? You've talked a lot about that, both of you, that the inspiration for getting started was to improve the world, to create less divisiveness, to create a community. There's a sense of belief and faith. What is your hope that the impact of your work in the show is doing? Let's start with you, Ken.
The impact is really one focus for me, and that is upshifting the consciousness of each person. As a business strategist for the last 30 years, I've worked with literally thousands of small businesses and hundreds of medium-sized businesses. And it doesn't really matter where they are as a business owner. When they come to me, they're usually stuck at a certain point. Maybe they're at 3 million revenue for the last 3 years, and they just can't get next step, or maybe they're under 100,000 small business owner, they can't get there. It's always a change of perspective. It's always a change of focus, change of mind. Always. I have one of my clients that took from 3 million to 8 million. He's up doing 100 million now. And every single time, it's been a change of his points of view and looking, of course, at what's working, building on those, looking at what's not working and seeing reality clearly, and then changing himself. Most of the times he had to change himself, right? All my clients are the same. They got to change themselves. So if there is an impact that I shoot for, it's the upshift of the consciousness to be able to help people to change in areas that matter to them most, which is, I believe, one of the most important areas that people change in is in their personal relationship with themselves and their personal relationship with others. I see us doing a lot more of that in the future. We have great storytellers that come on. We have courageous people that come on. We have individuals that have their own interactions with our audience.
And now I think I understand your focus on courage, because to change is scary, particularly for you to change. I'm supportive of for me to change. That's a different kind of thing. So that courage, I think, gets there. Madelyn, what is your hope for the impact of your show and your work?
Well, I use slightly different words, but with very much the same intention. I want people to recognize they have agency. They really have the power themselves, within themselves, to make the change or take the action, whatever it is. I talk about resilience. My book is on resilience. That's what Unlocked is all about. And it you won't be able to do that unless you feel that you can do it. And that's why I say to really build in them the sense of true agency.
Both of you about really improving people's lives, not your own. It almost seems more centered on others. What advice do you have for someone listening to lead not only their own TV show, but their life for the future? And how do you help them get there from this point? It's a big question, but I have one question at this point. So what advice do you have for people to get that kind of appreciation, the satisfaction, the success, the happiness that both of you are talking about. Ken?
Well, I thought you were going to call on Madelyn first.
All
Why
right,
don't you
Madelyn,
go
I'm
first?
an accommodating guy. Madelyn, go ahead. Either of you
Now,
can go
now what
first.
was the question? No.
Yeah,
That was a
yeah,
long question.
that's good. That's good. Yeah.
I think it really comes down to what is it that you want to do as a person. Clearly, both Ken and I are at a stage in our lives where it's about sharing our wisdom. I mean, my goodness, we haven't spent this many years on Earth just for ourselves. It's also for humanity. So it could be that this is the time for that for you. It could be that you want to enlarge the audience that you're talking to because you have a good message. Whatever it is, you've got to really decide yourself. This is something that I want to do.
Yeah. Well, you both have clear audiences. And I think I mean, I watch a lot of TV. It's not traditional TV, but I'm looking for people and places that tell a story and help explain things. So I think it's really it's an incredible learning medium. TV has really it changes things. Hopefully for good, can also be for bad. Ken, what about your thought? What's your advice? I know we have time for you to talk about your special, so that's separate from that. But the advice that you have in terms of people who are listening right now and how to continue moving forward.
Well, I will say this. Having your own show is awesome. It's amazing. And whether you start in radio or podcast or TV, wherever you are, whatever that dream is with inside of you, as Madelyn would say, then that's the dream that I want to support you to do. So I have a organization that my TCN, the Courage Network, we help people to get on to podcast and also on TV. And I hold events. So one's going to be coming up in November. But if you'd like to find out about it, just go to kendfoster.com. I don't want to give a big commercial on it, but if you have if you're feeling, I want to take it to the next level. Now, to get there is another story, because what I've learned over the years and helped so many people do is to look at themselves and look at their limiting beliefs, look at the little bit about the story that they've come up with, and change the story so that you can change it into the truth of really who you are and help you to get to the next level. It's something. If you have that dream in you, you feel that dream,
Yeah.
take the first step. The first step takes courage, and then the rest of the steps will take persistence and fortitude.
I believe I'm at time based on what I was suggesting, because we want to give Ken you time to talk about this exciting special, what it is and when it is and how we find that. So I will thank both of you. This has been a fascinating conversation. I guess it was about TV, but really it's about life. It's about team. It's about leadership, and it's about, I think the most important thing is how do we improve ourselves in society. It's really an important conversation. So I've found this really fascinating. So I think now's when I turn it over to you, Ken, to tell us about the exciting special and how we find that and what you're going to be doing with it.
You,
Well, thank you, Dr. Ed, so much. And I want to just compliment you on the brilliant questions that you've asked today. It's really been empowering for myself, and I know Madelyn, and of course the audience. So you did a brilliant job. Thank you so much. Madelyn, thank you for inviting me to do this with you. And just to the audience right now, if you're not watching Madelyn's show, I don't know what you're doing. This is powerful content that she delivers every week. So I hope you'll tune into her. The event that I have coming up is with Dr. Irvin Laszlo. It's called the Upshift Summit. The Upshift Summit. You'll be able to find it at upshiftsummit.com. The website, I'm not sure when this show will air, but the website will be up somewhere around November 5th. It's November 5th. You can count on that. So upshiftsummit.com. Now, why would you even want to attend? Well, we've brought in some of the most powerful thought leaders in the world. We have Dr. Deepak Chopra will be speaking. Greg Braden will be speaking. We have Dr. Bruce Lipton will be speaking. Marianne Williamson will be speaking. Jude Caravan will be speaking. Lynn McTaggart will be speaking. Some of these names, if you don't know them, Google them. You'll be impressed with what they've done. They're all New York Times bestselling authors. They've all helped tens of thousands of individuals shift their consciousness. And of course, Dr. Irvin Laszlo will be speaking, and who has helped countless individuals. Most of his books are in colleges around the United States. So I've called him the Joseph Campbell of our time. He's a brilliant man who we need to listen to. We're going to be talking about things like quantum physics, quantum mechanics, general science, entanglement theory, chaos theory, and we'll be talking also from another side. We'll be talking about Native American teachings. We'll be talking about Christian teachings. We'll be talking about Buddhist teachings and teachings from the major religions. Also, the study of the Vedic scriptures, some of the oldest scriptures in the world, and how they relate to science. So we're bringing in a lot of points of view for one reason: to help you upshift your consciousness and start to live from this place of oneness thinking, oneness consciousness. Which, if we do, I asked Dr. Laszlo, is it too late? Is it too late to save this planet? And he's very decisive. No, it's not. We still have time. But technology right now is outpacing our wisdom. So, we don't need more information in the world. Just Google it if you need it, or AI if you need information. But what we need today is wisdom to help us upshift our own thinking, to be able to manage technology in a way that is suitable for all mankind. And the only way we can do that is to upshift our thinking. That's what the summit's about. So you may want to shift and come and check this out. And by the way, there's no cost to this. And then we got to wrap this up. Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
I have to wrap up so I can sign up. That's amazing. That is truly amazing.
It's really.
Thank you for the time.
I have to tell you, Ken, my last presentation at a conference was called Story Reality and Quantum Physics. So I'll be there.
Oh, awesome. Okay. I look forward to
Thank you, Ken, for joining me. This has been a dream of mine, and I'm just so delighted. And to have Ed with us as well.
This has been great. This has been more, which is great. This is more than what I expected in terms of where it went. And so this is really a joy for me. Thank you both very much.
Every now and then, there is something that changes how I think about the world. Grounds for Thought is a place where I talk about these moments so that you can explore the meaning for yourself. I find the work of Jennifer Kleinan to be incredibly valuable. Her book, Choice Hacking: How to Use Psychology and Behavioral Science to Create an Experience That Sings. Kleinan's book is divided into chapters based on her choice model, which of course begins with C. So clear is the first chapter, and it's the one I will talk about today. Kleinan says people can only use information they can notice. She then talks about what makes something salient to the reader, the observer, the customer. But I'm going to talk about that another time. The other dimension of clarity is simplicity. People prefer simple experiences. This is what I want to talk about today. In other Grounds for Thought, I've talked about simplicity, whether it's about producing elegance or easing processes or making music. But today I'll talk about simplicity in marketing. For those of you who know me, know that I don't read emails that are longer than a single screen. Admittedly, I have a pretty big screen, but if I have to scroll and scroll, I'll stop and assume that anything below is not important to my decision. To me, if you want something from me, it has to be clear from the start, including the actions I'm being asked to take. So you can imagine my delight when I read Kleinan's talk about simplicity, This delight is amplified when I read that 55% of consumers are willing to pay more for uncomplicated experiences. Simplicity, to Kleinan's, begins with getting the basics right. To create a simple experience, it has to not confuse customers with so many options that a customer becomes confused, or I might add, frustrated between the options. For example, Evernote allows me to capture all manner of articles, papers, whatever, and to search and find them in future so that I don't have to keep track of the files. I loved using it and used it at least 3 times a day, whether for filing something new or retrieving something from a database. It made creating a blog so much easier when my focus was on the content, not on where it might be found. Then Evernote began putting bells and whistles on. Calendars, to-do lists, recents, and more. I already have calendars and a to-do list app. But their inclusion means that it is more difficult to use Evernote. Today, if I use it once a day, that's a lot. And with more than 6,000 entries in it, I really want to have access to them. What a shame to have ruined such a great platform for managing knowledge. The second factor of simplicity is providing tangible value. The customer is buying because they had or have some need. If their needs are met, then the customer will buy again and again, and even recommend to others. For example, I never actually cared if my car had disc brakes because I didn't understand what they did for me. Until one day, I saw them in action when I had to stop on ice. They're really valuable. But as a customer making a decision, I have to know the value to me, and I haven't had such a breakthrough with Evernote's doodads. Thirdly, keep things clear in terms of pricing. Be transparent. The transaction should be transparent from the start. For example, if you give a money-back guarantee, you need to be clear about when and how it is calculated. The best ones I have seen are 100% money back if you don't feel satisfied in the first 2 weeks for any reason. This I have seen when people offer internet-based courses, where enough time has gone by to give you a flavor of the course without the full share of the information. It says that if I can't give you some valuable information in the first 2 weeks, then you shouldn't be here. I took one course where I paid the full amount and assumed there would be good intentions about the value, only to learn that I had not asked enough questions. I have never recommended that course since. Now, what Kleinan's offers and suggests, she says, look for where your customer gets frustrated. Right in your own offering. In TV, I watch the average watch time. You're happy when it gets to 20 minutes, but you cheer when it goes over 30. That's for an hour-long show. It took me over a year to go from 20 to over 30 minutes average watch time. I think I did it by trying different formats until I saw the numbers climb even more than usual. For example, when I introduced Grounds for Thought, this very segment, I saw the numbers jump up. When I saw that, I knew I had brought something that you valued. She also says to look at your competitors. How do they make their experience simple and understandable? With TV, can your viewers anticipate what you will do so they know what to expect? Not in terms of content, but in structure. It makes them feel in control in a way. Are you consistent with your design? I change the design of my show very seldom, and I do it incrementally. I want my viewers to always feel they are in a familiar place that they know. I've already talked about the change that really made the difference, and it came after I had tried maybe 2 other options over a course of 2 years. Lastly, Kleinan says to move processes from the customer-facing front stage to the internal backstage. When I read this, I realized how much I resent the amount of customer-facing processes that I am asked to do today every time I visit a doctor's office. I must answer the same questions again and again. With technologies of today, I wonder why there isn't an option to have the basic information on a thumb drive you bring to the office for them to read. Confounding this is the fact that you can't get a price for what you're asking. I know, it's complicated because there are other players in the field called insurance. More practically for us in TV, the good news is that all you have to do as a customer is find the show and watch. Choice hacking, how to use psychology and behavioral science to create an experience that sings by Jennifer Kleinan. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and learned something new. And if you're on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe. I'm Madelyn Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock your resilient leader.